Right, hello everyone. Yeah, this is the second stream about her third trial, Leslie Van Houten's third trial, obviously. And can't find many pictures of it. These are the only two photos I can find of it. I don't know who the bloke in that picture with her is. That isn't her lawyer. But yeah, this is her in the car on the way in. I'm going to be walking into the building. Looks like the same day. She's wearing the same dress. And her lawyers. That's Max Keith. This is the guy that got her the second trial. He was the one that was brought in after her first lawyer disappeared. And Stephen Kay again is prosecuting in this one. And again, I couldn't find a picture of him from the actual trial. This is just a stock photo of him. After the second trial, the court granted Leslie the right to release on bail, thanks to friends who mortgaged their homes to come up with $20,000. On December the 27th, 1977, Leslie was freed on a $200,000 bond. She would be free until and for the duration of the third trial. She remained out of jail for over 6 months until July 1978. During those months, together with her family and other friends, I accompanied Leslie through moments of culture shock and easy homecoming as she ventured back into the world. We visited each other's family homes and we relaxed with friends. We talked about the future and where would she go if released and would she change her name. The third trial. The third trial began in March 1978 in the court of Judge Gordon Ringer. Disappointed at the outcome of the second trial, Stephen Kay changed his strategy for the third. He focused on the fact that food, clothing, coins and a wallet had been taken from the LaBianca home. Technically, this made felony robbery an additional motive for the murders. Unbeknownst to Pat and Leslie, Manson had taken a wallet before he sent his team into the house, but robbery was certainly not on their minds. The wallet was left intact as a decoy in a service station bathroom in what Manson mistakenly believed to be a black neighborhood. Manson intended that the police would assume a black person stole it. According to California state law at the time, a first-degree murder conviction required that the accused's state of mind was capable and culpable of premeditation, deliberation, and harboring malice, and further, the accused was able to reflect meaningfully and maturely on the gravity of the act. In the second trial, Max Keith had defended Leslie on the grounds of diminished capacity because she clearly had neither premeditated murder nor acted with deliberation or malice. Indeed, she had shown herself to be incapable of committing murder. Further, her behaviour during and following the first trial, that of her co-defendants, demonstrated that she was then incapable of reflecting in any meaningful or mature way on the seriousness of the murders. Instead of trying Leslie solely on murder in the third trial, as he had in the second, Stephen Kay changed the charge to felony murder committed in the act of robbery, a crime for which the state of mind was not legally relevant. This was a reversal of strategy of DA Vincent Bugliosi, who, when he had led the prosecution in 1970-71 trial, had stated unequivocally that there had been no evidence of ransacking or robbery. The LaBianca's son testified at the trial that nothing was missing, except a few clothing and coins. Bugliosi wanted it to be understood by the jury that Manson's motive for helter-skelter was what made the LaBianca murders part of the so-called crime of the century, singular, not a pedestrian robbery murder. With Leslie, Kay had to settle for less. The law was much less philosophical about murders committed in the course of a robbery, and conviction did not require evidence of malice, deliberation, or premeditation. Even though food, clothing, and coins did not constitute evidence of serious robbery from rooms filled with valuables, adding that charge gave the state the technical authority to convict her of murder as a first-degree offence. To bolster Kay's efficiency in the courtroom, a second DA, Dino Fulgoni, later appointed to a judgeship, was assigned to the case to assist with the trial. This particular man was versed in psychology and would be useful when the diminished capacity arguments were raised by the persistent Max Keith. Fulgoni's expertise was used to challenge the psychiatric testimony. The judge, for his part, explicitly instructed the jury to disregard Leslie's state of mind at the time of the crime or in the present. It was no longer relevant. Stephen Kay told the press, "I think if I can get a jury that follows the law instead of emotions, I can get a first-degree conviction." Once again, Kay displayed for the jury the enlarged colour photos of the murders of the Tate residents, emphasising his charge that Leslie was part of a conspiracy responsible for both nights of murder. Technically, conspiracy was irrelevant to this third trial because it was a single event of felony murder for which he was now being prosecuted. Thus, the Tate murders were likewise irrelevant. but the state showed commitment to her reconviction, and the strategy succeeded. In the process, the state could sidestep psychiatrists and other expert witnesses concerning Leslie's state of mind. Just as Kay no longer had grounds for the conspiracy theory as it applied to the Tate case, Keith no longer had legal grounds for asserting the diminished capacity defence, but he pushed it nevertheless. Leslie could not have understood the nature of the crime, he argued. Her mind was altered because of the cumulative effects of LSD and Manson's power over her. Keith strove to win a verdict of voluntary manslaughter, which is defined as unlawful killing without malice aforethought. On July 5th, 1978, 9 years after the crime and after 6 months of freedom, bail was pulled and Leslie, now aged 28, was returned to court to hear the jury's guilty verdict. She was then taken back to jail to await sentencing. The jury's foreman later told the press that jurors had agreed that Leslie suffered some diminished capacity, but we just could not determine that it was diminished to the extent that was required to relieve her of responsibility for what she had done. The jury's unanimous conviction on 2 counts of first-degree felony murder did not clear up the question of individual responsibility versus coercion. The third trial, however, had the effect of officially separating Leslie's case from that of her 3 co-defendants. Legally, she was no longer one of them. Superior Court Judge Gordon Ringer didn't equivocate. He sentenced her to 7 years to life in prison. Given California law in 1978, the new sentence automatically carried with it the possibility of parole after 7 years, which she had already served, and he encouragingly implied she might well become an early beneficiary of that provision. Leslie had other judicial reasons for hope. The release in fewer than 10 years of Jean and Linda, her early prison mates in the old death row unit, offered encouragement as Leslie approached 10 years in prison. More important, Leslie was no longer legally a death penalty overturn. For her part in the crime of which she was now convicted, she would not have received the death penalty, even though it was then back in force in California. The conspiracy to murder charge was technically moot in the third trial. In 1971, Kay's then boss Vincent Bugliosi had succeeded in convicting Leslie of 7 murders based on conspiracy. In 1977 and 78, it took 2 juries and a severely compromised strategy on Kay's part to convict her of 2 of them. She was now officially separated from her association with Helter Skelter. So yeah, you can see they totally, basically overturned everything, and he totally changed his strategy and went for it as a robbery, because then they didn't have to take into account her state of mind. Because in the first trial, when they took into account all that, the jury got too emotional and couldn't decide. So he decided to go for the robbery thing, because then they didn't take into account her state of mind. In fact, the jury were told not to take into account her state of mind. Yeah, well, that's the thing, the diminished capacity thing. That the jury were told not to take that into account, weren't they? Even though her lawyer still pushed it, that wasn't relevant to this if it was treated as a robbery. But that's interesting, isn't it? That he accepted it in this case, so he would definitely get a conviction, because it was too hard when they did it the way that the diminished capacity was taken into account. The jury got too emotional and couldn't decide, so it was easy. Yeah. I think not manslaughter. Yeah, well, she was. It looks like she was stabbed in the doorway as she was crawling towards the door. It looks like, yeah. They said that it's like quite a while after she was dead. She's supposed to have gone over and stabbed her, isn't she? And she said later at the second trial that she lied about having stabbed her while she was alive, apparently. And I can believe that. But it was a lot that she stabbed the dead body as well. That's, quite strange, isn't it? How much she stabbed her. And worrying. Yeah, that's it. Everyone had. Yeah, it does make it sound pretty bad, pretty fucking tame, doesn't it? That was the worst that happened to her, was her parents got divorced. And she had an abortion. I mean, yeah, and Mrs. Yeah, Rosemary LaBianca's life. Yeah, she was adopted, wasn't she? And yeah, went through quite a lot by the sound of it. When I read through the police report, I read all that out, all the drama in her life. Yeah, yeah, because the public opinion seems to be very much in favour of letting her go now. Just looking at what all articles are saying and that, so it does look like she probably will. Because he's taken his time to object. If he's going to object, isn't he? I thought he only had about 10 days to object. If he doesn't see him, then she's going to get out, isn't she? Interesting to see how the public reacts if she does get out, or if they'll find some way to recall her to prison somehow. Throw some links back through the chat. It's the same Maxwell Keith that managed Jefferson Airplane. That's her lawyer. I did find a few other pictures of him though. He does go back to the 60s as a lawyer. Right, no, I've seen all the chat now. That's it. And the other thing I found was the actual article on the Lost Wikimedia about the pen pal, the original thing I was going to talk about in the original Leslie stream that I did. I found the article she must have been talking about in the video that I saw about her having the pen pal who she sent sexual letters to. But yeah, it's interesting how though the defense totally changed. How the prosecution, should I say, the prosecution's tactics completely changed, and they let robbery be taken into account. Because if that had happened at the first trial, they would have completely changed everything, wouldn't it? He was very anxious that they didn't take robbery or their state of mind into account, wasn't he? So they only saw the psychiatrists that were working for him, and he was very anxious to make sure that they thought that there was no evidence of robbery or ransacking. But then at Leslie's third trial, to convict her, he does take into account robbery, even though they only took a few coins and some food. But to get her convicted of murder. Yeah, well, apparently it says in the book that he says, so he thinks she's done well for her sentence with the law, and the DA always said she'd be released early. Think about Leslie's victims' families and all the parole hearings. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Well, the LaBianca family have had a lot of tragedy, haven't they, since this? And they lost everything after Lino died and couldn't, I didn't have a chance to do anything about his debts and all that. But he did say in court as well, afterwards, that he expected her to be released by the time she was 40. He wanted to try and keep her in prison until she was 40, Stephen Kay. But she's still there now, she's just never got released, has she? Even after all these years. It is a shame. In a way. But I don't think that she should get released if the others didn't get. And why is she the only one that got the retrials as well? It isn't fair, is it, really? Yeah. Well, Tim blames Charles Manson. So she should have been out a long time ago. Well, yeah, his influence did fucking make her violent. I'm sure she wasn't gonna do anything like this until she heard Charles Manson going on about death and killing and being willing to kill for someone and all that sort of stuff. Being willing to kill for him. Yeah, well, this is it. Presumably, she'd have to be released anonymously, wouldn't she? I can't see her giving up her own. Well, she might do, but I can't see her giving up anonymity. I think she'd be released, and no one would know where she went. And she'd probably have a different name and all that, wouldn't she? One would assume, but I can't see it happening. To be honest, I think that he will. But he's taken his time to object, isn't he? That's what's surprising me. It was like about 5 or 6 years after the murders, I think, wasn't it, when they were in prison? I'm not sure exactly when. It does say in the book. I could look it up for another stream. But yeah, not that many years after she'd been in prison for a few years. about 4 or 5 years. She renounced it all, I think. Oh, she is, isn't she? I know. I've seen her on. There's an interview with her already. She actually has her own YouTube channel. I found her at her YouTube channel, and yeah, she has done interviews and has been talking about it and saying yeah, and because she represents the La Bianca family, doesn't she now? Because they are too upset to do it. Basically, yeah. But it's obviously very distressing for them. Looking at pictures, there aren't, like I said, there are hardly any photos at all. Just these two. That's literally all you can find. It's like, yeah, her looking out the car like that. And it's obviously the same dress, isn't it? Her haircut's completely different, though, to the first trial photos. It's the only like way you can tell it's a different trial. But I have heard as well that there's another book. There's a boyfriend that she had while she was out on bail. Someone's just shown me in a group, yeah, so I didn't have time to get it together for this stream. But he talks about the third trial as well, apparently, and that's the first I've heard of him. It's crazy. Yeah, well, in the transcripts that are on CLA Drive, like, was a psychologist invited to look at the trial. There was loads of them at the whatever trial it is that's in the at least one I read. Those are about two different psychiatrists, I think, spoke at the. I don't know if it's the second or third trial. The transcripts we're seeing on CLA Drive are, but there's not many of them. It's incomplete anyway, whichever one of the trials it is. Mm. It doesn't give you much information about the third trial. Everything I read out there is all it gives you. Mm. Yeah, I think one of Gary Hinman's relatives has spoken about it too. Yeah, because I've been trying to find articles about it, seeing what people are saying. And that, yeah, I think someone has from the Hinman family has spoken out, a cousin of him or something. But yeah, it is just strange how they changed the focus totally of the motive. And if they did that for the others as well, then that would. Well, the first trial, they all should have got a mistrial. I mean, this lawyer found out, found a reason why she should have got a mistrial, but they all should at many points. So why is Leslie the only one that ever got the retrial? And it hasn't done her any good, has it? She's still in prison now. She's unlikely to get out. But like I say, he's not objecting, is he? Maybe she will. Have to wait and see. Do an update stream when she's released. But yeah, I reckon she'll be anonymous. I don't think that she'll give up her anonymity and give interviews and all that. I think we won't know where she is and who she is and all that. You never know though. So I think she is getting out. Go Team Leslie. Well, it does look like it at the moment, doesn't it? Unless he does object. And he hasn't yet. But public opinion does seem to be in favour of letting her go. And legally, from the outcome of this third trial, they should have let her go sometime in the 80s, basically, or 90s. Well, she'd already done her time at the time of the third trial. But it's in 1982 that she marries the bloke who tried to bust her out as well. Yeah, that's another thing that we could start to talk about, isn't it? Yeah, because I found a load of weird stuff. It's hard to find information about the guy she married. And there's all these weird articles saying he was a member of the Manson family. But mixing up the names of the victims and everything, it's really fucking bizarre. So yeah, that's another thing to look into. Who the hell was the man that she married while she was in prison in 1982? And he apparently tried to bust her out and had stolen a matron's uniform from the prison, presumably for her to change into when he was busting her out. And she said that she had no idea he was doing that, which is another weird thing as well, isn't it? If someone was busting you out of prison, surely they'd have to let you know. They couldn't just do it as a surprise. Yeah, well, I don't think she's a threat to society now, no. It's a political thing at this point, isn't it? You know, it'll just be bad publicity for whichever governor has to do it. But I don't think there's enough people still alive that care that much anymore, sadly. I don't think it will make much difference to people if they do let her go. Yeah, that's it. The other thing as well that you have to take into account is how young she was. She was incredibly young, wasn't she? And she made an incredibly stupid decision, basically. Yeah, well, he's not going to object, is he? If he unless they're getting together grounds to do it, and they're going to wait till the last minute. Hmm. Yeah, I reckon she's got a lot of friends on the outside, though, hasn't she? So I think she'd have a big support network of people to look after her. I'm sure they don't just release them straight away, do they? If she'll go into a halfway house and all that. Yeah, yeah, that's it. They talk about it like she's got angel wings, don't they? She just fly out, fly out of prison. Yeah, that's it. That's it. She was only 19 years old when she did all this. You know, I think she's done more than enough time in prison for what she did. Her part in it, the enormity of the whole thing. Her part in it all happening. I think she's more accountable for what she did than she's ever admitted, though. That's the thing that makes me think that she shouldn't get out unless she gives, you know, a more truthful account of why it all happened. But if she does that now, then she's got to admit she lied. So then they'll question everything, won't they? And she'll lose her chances for parole again. Yeah, that's it. Do things we do things wrong that we never dream of now. This is a very fucking extreme version of that, isn't it? Yeah. But in the atmosphere they were in, it was what was what was happening. Everyone was doing it. It was like and I believe in the group psychosis, the folie à deux psychosis. I think they all had some kind of group psychotic episode, and that was it. Why did she do it? I think that it was to do with Bobby trying to free Bobby, and she also was really friendly with Krenwinkel, wasn't she? I think Krenwinkel probably talked her into it. I think Krenwinkel probably talked to her about Cielo Drive, what had happened the night before, and convinced her to come along. I think Krenwinkel was probably responsible for convincing her to go more than Charlie. Oh, sorry. Mm. That was it. She showed up with Bobby, didn't she, originally? Bobby bought her some Manson. That's the other thing no one talks about. And that's not brought up at her trials either. Even though she talked about being at Gary Hinman's at the first trial during the sentencing phase, didn't she? Yeah, yeah, that's it. She wanted to be like Patricia Krenwinkel. That's why she committed the crime. Maybe she did do more. I don't know. I think she might have lied about it, to be honest. And as it was happening, she freaked out and couldn't do anything. And I think the same thing probably happened with Susan as well. I think Susan probably did a lot less than people think that she did. Yeah. Yeah, she wanted to prove to Crumwinkle that she could do it. Hmm. Yeah, that's another point. No matter how old you are, it's the same thing, isn't it? Yeah, and she did it to try and get Bobby out. And that's another thing that never got brought up at either of her other trials, you know. All they talk about is the brainwashing by Charles Manson. So, oh, come on, really. Mhm. Yeah. Even those criminal activities in their teens escalate and those held responsible in their teens with the programs don't cover for your kids. Yeah, well, this is the thing that her mother talked about, you know, regretting letting her go off and have the hippie lifestyle. But there was that weird thing, wasn't there, at the time, the progressive parenting thing. You know, people were told to just let their kids go off and make their own mistakes and that. And what happened to Leslie fucking probably didn't happen to a lot of people, did it? You know, it was a very extreme situation what happened to Leslie. But it was all to do with drug deals and bikers and all stuff like that, you know what I mean? It was nothing to do with cult brainwashing. Well, they're listening to Charles Manson talk, the way he talked about death and killing and everything, you know. It's definitely going to have influenced her, isn't it? Obviously. And it did. Yeah, that's it. It was a harebrained scheme, wasn't it? Yeah, how could they? It was like, you know, they'd seen something on a late night movie or whatever, isn't it? And we're trying to. Oh, sorry, just asking my water. Got a dry throat. Yeah, that's it. Let your kids run off free like Diane Lake's parents. And Angela Lansbury, who let her daughter go off with Charles Manson. Look at John Phillips. And Michelle Phillips. The way they kids and Mama Cass, the way the things that were going on around her daughter. Yeah. No parents for cover for their kids. Shoplifting and drugs, etc. Don't cover for them. What do you think they should do then? What? Shop them to the police? Yeah, I think John Phillips, Charlie Manson, and Roman Polanski and girls like that were waiting for the kids, yeah, that people would let him run off. And girls were being told suddenly the goalpost totally changed. It wasn't being a virgin that was fashionable anymore. It was, you know, not being a virgin and being ready to do anything with anyone at any moment. Yeah, so, well, yeah, predators. There were a lot of predators just waiting, weren't there, around this time? And all the free love and let your children run free uh, just made it easier for them, didn't it? Yeah. Guys like Charles Manson, he just had this group of girls and let anyone do whatever he wanted with them, basically, didn't he? And looking at that Hendrickson documentary, there's those some of those blokes didn't look very savoury, did they? None of them did. And oh, what's he called? Morehouse, Dean Morehouse ended up going to prison, didn't he, in the 80s for child sex offences. having sex with a minor or whatever, didn't he? Ruth Ann Morehouse, no one's ever heard anything from her. She's never given interviews or written a book or anything, has she? But yeah, sounds like she went through it. And her father had custody of her, was there the whole time, just letting these guys do it, Shocking. So, that one. Yeah, Dean was. Dean Morehouse was super creepy. And he lived at the guest house. That's who Tex lived with at the guest house, wasn't it? So just fucking Tex was probably kind of creepy as well. What would he have gone on to do if he hadn't done this? He just carried on at a low level. I think the course is that they send juveniles on and turn them around and that. Yeah, they can take you into the jails, can't they, and introduce you to the cons and all that. Yeah. Hendrickson never told you what he did in Vietnam. Hendrickson himself actually did in Vietnam. Was he in Vietnam? I don't know. Was it relevant, really? Wonder if he filmed anything in Vietnam. That would be interesting to know. Yeah, I could end this one now anyway. I could say it just because this is going to be a shorter one because there was only that to read out about her trial. But yeah, there's more to talk about with Leslie because there's well, as I find out more about who her uh who her husband was, sorry, who the man she married was, who tried to break her out of prison. That would be interesting because it's quite hard to find information about him, and it seems like there's a lot of false information out there about him. And what did he actually do? How far did he get in trying to break her out of prison? And how could she have not known about it? Because she claims to have not known about it. Oh, it would be relevant if he'd been in Vietnam if he was Army intelligence. Well, it is interesting that he's the only person that made a really detailed film about them, isn't it? But it was all after the murders too, wasn't it? I don't think he was there filming them before the murders happened, was he? Or anything like that. But Melcher had people photographing them at the ranch, though, hadn't he? So maybe. But Hendrickson was nothing to do with that, was he? I don't think. Especially the army until the guys are embedded with the police department stateside. Hmm. The fact America had special access to the family that was denied other media outlets. Then you have to wonder why it was. Yeah, because he got to visit Manson in prison and all that as well, didn't he? I'm sure Hendrickson did. It is weird. Did other media outlets go for that much access to them? Though, I said, well, you would assume they would have done. Well, nowadays they would, wouldn't they? But I don't know what they would have done now. Back then, I mean. The film was done after, wasn't it? Yeah, that's when he filmed them. But yeah, in the aftermath. But I'm sure. I remember hearing that he got to go and see Charlie in prison and speak to Charlie about the film getting made because it was about him. Yeah, I found articles about his name, and but it's hard to find because the articles I've read suggest that he was one of the Manson family and he's one of the Manson murderers, but he wasn't. He was a murderer, though, apparently, but he was nothing to do with the Manson murders. I don't think he was a Manson family member. So it's like there's a lot of false information articles out there. It's like they're trying to hide the truth, mask something about him. Merritt. Is he what? Because I've not even really heard his name, only Hendrickson. Yeah. But he died as well, did he? Another mysterious death. Did he ever refuse to hand over the tapes or anything like that? Because they got funny about that in the second FBI report. That's where he was sending from prison. Manson was sending the girls after a reporter that refused to give Manson the tapes of an interview that he promised he'd give him. Yeah, they should actually lose their sense of empathy. You learned a lot of things you never knew about the Manson family. Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, thanks for watching. Like I say, I'm only just trying to share all the shit that I found. Make people see it too. It is very strange. A very strange case. And it becomes clear why there was such a cover up when you see how close it was to actual Hollywood people. You know, that's what was being covered up, and that's what they'll never. That's why they'll never talk, because they've sworn to never reveal the Hollywood links, basically, and they would have to if they admit now. Well, was he murdered? Marriott was murdered. I haven't even heard about this, so I will have to look into it now. I think their minds went blank. Well, I think it was to do with the psychosis that they had, the shared psychosis, and they all had this feeling that death wasn't, uh, doing them a disservice. That it was better for them to be dead or some shit like that, wasn't it? You know, they were reasoning it out in a weird way that it was something that had to be done. Was the defense that was used. But I don't believe that's true. I think that they went in there knowing, what they were doing and why. And I think for her, the motive was probably about Bobby. She foolishly thought they would in some way help Bobby. And to prove to Kronwinkle, that she could do it because she wanted to be like Patricia Kronwinkle. Yeah, that's it. LSD, the power of suggestion drug. It was popular until it wasn't. Yeah. Yeah. Is it true that her mother really buried it in the backyard then? I don't know about that. That seems a bit. She did have an abortion, an illegal abortion, but I don't know, yeah, if her mother really made her bury it in the backyard. Because her mother seemed very supportive of her later in life. What was it? She said it can't. Yeah. Yeah, well, that was the other thing, wasn't it? Of course, Manson sort of made them all believe, yeah, that there was no death and all that sort of shit. So, in their fucked up state of mind, they didn't think what they were doing was wrong. Would be their defense, wouldn't it? I think they did know what they were doing. Yeah, that's it. I could do a whole other stream about all the stuff she got up to when she was on bail. She worked as a legal secretary, and she had a boyfriend apparently who's written a book. I've just seen this book. Gotta try and find that now. So yeah, there might be more for another stream. Yeah, she went to the Oscars. Yeah, that's it. That is fucked up, isn't it? Why would you want it buried in your backyard? So I kind of wonder, yeah, if that's an exaggeration somehow. It's got to be some kind of exaggeration, hasn't it? She just sort of means they made her feel really guilty for it, as if it was buried in the backyard or something like that, Yeah. Yeah, that's it at the time. Maybe it was less scandalous, yeah, to hide it in that way. Yeah, yeah, and it was illegal. Even so, surely the abortionist would take it away, you know, or whatever. Yeah, yeah, that's a weird aspect of it. And they say, what did her mother say in court? Yeah, it said it was a sobering time for the family when she had an abortion when she was 17. So yeah, you can see how she was messed up by that. And she talks about being attacked while she was in Haight Ashbury as well, and that was why she carried a knife. When they asked her about carrying a knife, yeah, yeah, knew what she was going to do. She admitted in 1993 it was Diane Sawyer. Yeah, she's given lots of interviews, hasn't she? Yeah, well, she talks very and sounds very cold about it all. But yeah, so I imagine that you must feel quite detached from it, you know, when you did it in such a messed up mental state and so long ago. So yeah, and she's had a long time to think about it, hasn't she? You know, so this is why she can talk about it so coldly. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Has anyone looked in the garden? Oh, I hope not. Yeah, that's it. She does seem very cold about it, doesn't she? Apparently, in court, she cried and had to gulp for air. She found it hard to talk about it. Yeah. No, I haven't heard that. What, Leslie on a podcast? What, so is that like a pre-recorded interview? Or did they interview her over the phone or something? Yeah, it will be interesting to see if they let her out. They might. Uh, oh, excuse me. Yeah, I should really try and exhume their fetus. See and find it in the garden. Cadaver dogs. I doubt they would have managed to bury it 100 foot down as well, would they? Dogs should be able to sniff it out. My God. But yeah, her parents have got to be dead by now, haven't they? Who's got that house now? Anyway, I've nearly gone for an hour. I didn't mean to go this long with this one because there was much less to read out. But yeah, I got it read out. Thanks for coming, everyone. Anyway, and there's no need to do an after stream. I don't think. So, like I said, it's just a shorter stream. I don't know what I'm going to do on Saturday night now, but I'll post in my group and on the community tab when I decide. All right, yeah. So they interviewed her over the phone and then the podcast strung them together. Because you're not actually allowed to interview people in California now, are you? As well, the ones in prison, people convicted of murder in California. You're not allowed to interview them. Yeah. Yeah. Good night, everyone. Anyway, I'm pretty tired. I just want to get this out of the way because it wasn't worth it to do a full stream just about the third trial. Yeah, thanks for tuning in on this weird night of the week. And thank you. I'll make sure you've got your notifications turned on. And, oh, if you're watching on replay and you've got this far, make sure you subscribe. I should put one of these up. Where's Leslie? There we go. Be sure to subscribe, yeah, and like the stream. And make sure you've got notifications turned on. You have to click the bell and click all. So it says in my what's it? My you know, analytics. There's a YouTube background basically. Yeah, a lot of people haven't got the notifications turned on, so you don't get notified when I go live on YouTube. You got to click the bell and click all. Yeah, and subscribe and like the streams. And thanks for watching the videos as well. My views have gone up, so people are watching the videos. That all really helps. So yeah, thank you everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Yeah, good night everyone.